Hello, film fans. Welcome to the Film vs. Film podcast. My name is Martin Harries, your host, and I'm joined by the film encyclopedia man, Boaz Dix. We are a couple of filmmakers on occasion, but mainly can't stop yapping about movies. On this podcast, every episode we pick a topic from a film that's coming out at the cinema or on VOD. Myself and Boaz pick our favourite film from that topic, or team up against a guest and battle it out to decide which film will become the greatest film of all time. If you enjoy this podcast, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. Please enjoy part 1. Right, hello, this week as... hang on a minute, my script says... For some reason, all work and no play makes Martin a dull boy. That's like everything says that. It's literally on every single page. Every single one. That's really weird. I'll just carry on and do it off the cuff, I guess. Right. So this week, as Salem's Lot was supposed to come out this week, but unfortunately it was moved back to April 2023. Which was a bit of a shame, but it would be totally unfair on you guys to make you pick a different subject. So we kind of stuck with it. And of course, we have guests this week, which is very exciting, from the Comfort Film podcast, Georgia and John. How are you guys?
Good.
Great. Very happy to be here with you.
Yeah.
And getting to talk about one of my favorite things, which is Stephen King.
Nice.
So, yeah.
It's one we've always wanted to talk about, and we haven't had an opportunity. Yeah. So, yeah, we're excited.
Not very comforting, that Stephen King.
No.
He's got a few exceptions there, but, you know.
I mean, it is a family movie.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Yeah, both of them are.
Right, yeah, it's true. It's true.
And of course, I'm joined by a man who loves his glass of red rum. Boaz Dix, how are you, sir?
I'm very good. Yeah. Yep.
Good. Yeah, as you guys have mentioned already, we're going to do Stephen King adaptations for this week. So, Georgia, John, tell us about your podcast. What's it about? Where can we find you?
Yeah, so we are Comfort Films podcast. We started about a year ago, but we are already at 43 episodes. So, we love talking about movies in real life. And many times people had told us to start a podcast. So we were mulling it over, and we had the idea to do a podcast that talks about the movies that we revisit over and over again. So whether it's something that's like a classic comfort film that's like nostalgic and something you might have watched when you were a kid, or something that we just fell in love with and just keep watching. Those are the kind of movies that we discuss on our show. Either just the two of us. We're a married couple. We've been together since 2001. And married since 2005. And so it's either just us, or sometimes we bring in friends to talk about their favorite movies to shake things up a bit.
We keep it going, though. I mean, it's something where we never stop talking about movies. I've had people tell me to stop talking about movies. They want to talk about something else.
No.
They try to talk to me about sports. I'm a big guy. So there's like this natural thought that I know sports. No. And I don't.
Just movies.
Just movies. So,
but yeah, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, pretty much anywhere that you can find podcasts. You can find us at Comfort Films Podcast. We also have an Instagram that John runs, puts up a ton of content, polls, quizzes, and fun facts about the movies that we discuss. So check us out there. Slightly less active on Twitter, but trying to make that a little bit more robust as well. But we'll be happy to talk to anybody, and we'll be happy to, have somebody check us out and, let us know what you think.
We also have a YouTube page, which we're building, and we have a TikTok page, which is really sad. I'm really old, but I'm trying, guys.
Yeah.
I'm trying.
Trying to join, the 21st century there. And then, we also we're working on our own website where we have a blog up, where we do, a little further discussion and writing on each of the movies we talk about. So quite a lot of content out there. But the good thing about that is that you can jump in and pick a movie that well, and dig in with us
Yeah.
on that. So
And we've also worked together for a long time in many different capacities. I mean, how we met is I was actually directing a play out in Boston with my theater company, and Georgia acted in it. And after that, I mean, we've shot short films together. We've shot documentaries together.
yeah,
We've worked on a web series together. We've written plays together. It's great because we're married, and also it's like a fun, creative team, So, yeah, it's pretty good.
Awesome. So you certainly know your stuff, guys. So Salem's Lot, then, a remake. What do we think of this decision? I mean, are we looking forward to it? Is it a wise decision? I mean, I quite liked the original one. The whole tapping on the windows still kind of freaks me out when I watch that scene. What do we think?
it's like a lesser known movie, I think, because it is older. So I think people have kind of forgotten about it. And it is an early Stephen King novel as well. So I feel like not as many people are familiar with the property. So I think it is probably ripe for a remake in that respect.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with it. I have said many times I'm not a big vampire person. I kind of got oversaturated with vampires at one point.
They are everywhere.
Yeah, it was too vampire-y around this place. But, I think that I've read the book and I have seen the first movie, so I'm willing to give it a shot. We just had that Firestarter remake that came out a few months back.
Yeah.
And some things about that were successful, some things maybe not as much. But it was interesting to see them take another super early Stephen King book and that hasn't been made into a film for a long time and do something new with it. So, yeah.
I mean, for me with Salem's Lot, I mean, I understand, with the oversaturation of vampires, I can definitely relate to that. And we could definitely all agree that really the exploration of vampires will never get any better than what we saw in the Twilight series. So
all right, you're done. You're out of here.
That is Mike.
But
stagehand, pull him away.
Was it Shining Vampires?
Yeah. There goes Johnny.
People have thought my name has been Mike for years, by the way, just as a quick side note. I don't know why. Always Big Mike because, I'm a big guy. I mean, it's something that I've always had.
Yeah.
A friend once said to me,
that's strange.
Yeah, I don't know what it is.
I've seen it happen multiple times. Like people will know for 3 years will suddenly call him Mike.
Yeah.
Multiple times.
I don't know.
That's so bizarre.
Maybe it's inside. Yeah.
Maybe it's, where people just say you look like a, whatever, you look like a Mike. Or, maybe that's it.
Look, buddy, you look pretty bad. You look like a real Mike, buddy. Yeah, the subtext, right? Right. It's all about the subtext. But I mean, I'm always down for a new Stephen King spin because, yes, the new Firestarter, I did enjoy many things about it. I mean, there were some of the updates that I was like, thank you. Some of the casting choices, that were different.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it was nice to see a Native American man playing a Native American man. That was like
instead of George C. Scott.
Right. Like
yeah.
George C. Scott, excellent actor, not Native American.
No.
That with Salem's Lot, this is one that I came to much later. It wasn't one that was right off for me. The piece that I always remember, if I'm remembering this accurately, is it's like George Zunza is freaking out on his wife for cheating on him. That's the scene that I always remember.
That's like totally not the point of the thing. So.
That is the point.
You really like George Zunza, though, I guess.
I mean, I name dropped George Zunza. That shows you I've got something in the game. But no, I mean, Salem's Lot, I'm happy to go back. I want to hang out. And I do enjoy vampires. Honestly, when we get a new adaptation, I'm happy. I mean, years ago in the 80s, I mean, look at what they did with the Lost Boys. And I'm always hoping that they're going to bring us, something new, something fresh. And the great thing about Stephen King's material is he has so much that he brings to the party that I think that you put any two filmmakers in the room, they're not going to make the same movie.
Yeah.
I mean, even, again, like, I mean, we talk about the Shining. There's a TV movie. There was a theatrical release, and we
They're
went
very
different ways.
different.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, should we go with The Mist first, guys?
Sure.
As our choice?
Yeah, sure.
So, why did we pick The Mist, Boaz? Again, it might be one of these situations where our guest picks an incredible film. We're like, okay, let's accept defeat. Let's pick something a bit different.
Yeah.
But I mean, in terms of Stephen King adaptations, I was kind of thinking like Carrie. I do kind of love that film. I watched that fairly young, and I kind of studied it at university as well. It's very intriguing movie about female repression and things like that. But it obviously the final climax of that film is really just incredible. I love the thing that Edgar Wright always kind of says about Carrie, that the bucket of blood is going to come down, but like maybe this time it won't. It always kind of has that sense. I kind of like that theory from Edgar on that movie. But one of my favorites definitely is Misery with James Caan.
Yeah, that's a good one.
The Rob Reiner movie. I do love
Excellent.
that film. I've watched that many times. Yes, watching it now with today's kind of culture, you could argue it's a tad problematic, but I still really, really enjoy that. And my mum hates the hobbling scene. She just can't watch it.
It's harsh.
Yeah. It's an incredible film, though. This was very much your choice, Boaz, wasn't it? The Mist. So why did you end up going for this one?
I think it's mainly the ending. I've had the ending spoiled for me.
Yeah.
And it is such a kind of dour, sort of interesting ending way to end a film. So I think that's what like drew me to it. I'm thinking I was like, I just remember that ending. And I never watched it, so I just kind of wanted to dive in it and just sort of see the rest of the film other than just the ending,
You do like spoilers, don't you, Boaz?
Yeah,
for
pretty
some
much.
reason.
Yeah.
So what happens in The Mist then, Boaz?
It's set in a small town with this man called David Drayton and his son. And after a horrible storm that trashed his house, he goes to the nearest supermarket or convenience store to get some supplies. While there, a mist covers the town. The only place not caught in it is the convenience store. And it turns out that in the mist are, freaky monsters. Eventually, everybody starts to get a bit crazy because one of the ladies there, she thinks that this is a sign of the apocalypse and they need to sacrifice people and stuff. And nobody believes her at first, but she tends to get things right, almost kind of like by accident. Meanwhile, David and his group, they're trying to sort of work out how to survive this and escape.
Cool. So initial reactions to this one then when you first saw it, compared to now, guys, comfort film, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think we've seen this since it was in the theater.
I saw it one time since.
For me, the ending is kind of what makes this movie. All this build-up stuff is interesting, and I think it's something that we've seen in a lot of other movies. And I think Frank Darabont does a pretty good job of kind of drawing on some of those older movies like Night of the Living Dead or something like that, where you have this group of people thrown together in an enclosed space, dealing with an outside threat that's kind of like a mindless, unstoppable threat. But what always gets me with this movie is the ending choice that was made. It isn't the same as the book.
Oh, okay.
Because I've read the novella. The novella had kind of more of it was just intimated that it could happen. Basically they said, we have this gun.
Okay.
There's 5 of us and we have 4 bullets. And that was how it ended. But this kind of goes on to the next step after that. And I did some background reading that Frank Darabont, really made a lot of compromises. I believe he took a less salary or no salary just so that they would agree not to mess with the ending that he wrote and filmed for this, because everybody kind of wanted to soften it because it is super bleak. It's really funny to me with that because Darabont also did another Stephen King adaptation, which is Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah.
and he wrote and directed that. And that's like got this super hopeful, buoyant kind of ending. And this is like the complete opposite of that. So I guess he's like, all right, well, if I do that, I'm going to completely do the opposite in another Stephen King movie, which is what he does here.
Well, it was very strange when we watched it this time because it's like the inside threat inside the supermarket is so crazy. You know, like you have no handle on anything inside the supermarket. Outside, you know you're going to die. It seems to be like you're going to die quickly, but it's like it's a known, it's a given. You go outside, you're going to die. But on the inside, as we see, you know, Marcia Gay Harden's Miss Carmody take power, you know, it's like I can't even believe that they stayed in the supermarket that long.
Like you'd rather go out and accept certain death than deal with this psychotic, fanatic, religious person.
Yeah.
I can relate to that.
Interesting.
Yeah, I do like that sort of side of it. I like Miss Carmody as a villain, and yeah, it is kind of very disconcerting that like even in the supermarket they're not safe. I like some of the creature designs. Most of the acting, I'm not like a huge fan of the lead here, but you know he's okay.
Thomas Jane.
Yeah, Thomas Jane. Yeah, I mean, one kind of negative thing I think is like some of the special effects I don't think hold up, and especially I would say like the first attack. Like some of it's not too bad, but I would say the most egregious, which you know, I just wish they did differently, is like the first attack. And I think like that's always something you want to get right because it's your first time seeing these things. And those tentacles look bad. They just looked really, really bad. So I don't know if he could have like reshot that or just cut off a lot more. Like don't show I think he was showing too much. Like have like, you know, 10 tentacles come out the door, but they all look terrible. Just like maybe he should have just done one. That kind of really bothered me for the rest of the film. I was like, oh man, I cannot get over that. You know, that first attack, it really did bother me.
Yeah, I think they certainly hide a lot of the CGI in the mist, the actual mist, to kind of mask it a little bit.
Yeah,
which I think is clever.
Yeah, I think that was a good choice, but then it just kind of it still bothers me that they didn't do that for the first scene. It's like, man, if you'd just done that for the first scene, then you know I wouldn't see the you know the sort of puppeteer behind the act. You know what I mean? I'd be like, okay, yeah, the CGI is good. I wouldn't be like, oh, okay, you're using the mist to cover it up.
Yeah, I enjoyed this film a lot. You know, I think it's very much all about the ending of this film. It's so
the ending is really
just
good.
Shocking and just like, oh my god, I can't believe they've gone down this route. You know, but let's get into it then with directing. Boaz has mentioned kind of the first scene already, but I kind of love the tentacle attack in the generator room. You know, I love the part where Toby Jones gets an axe to try and free Norm from one of the tentacles, but the creature pulls him away from Thomas Jane as Toby Jones is swinging the axe down and nearly cuts his head off.
Yeah.
Yes, you can question the CGI in this, but I just appreciate the creature design of how like the tentacles just open up to reveal a load of like nasty claws. That was great.
The creature design is pretty good.
I mean, what's our favorite like monster creature designs in this film? I love the ginormous one near the end.
Yeah, I think that's mine. The behemoth at the right end. Like that thing looks crazy. It's like a giraffe, but the head is all tentacles and stuff. You're like, what the hell is this? And how huge it is. It's like the car is so tiny. I just love that shot as well. It's just the car is so tiny in the corner, and this thing is just phenomenally huge.
I like that too. Yeah.
Yeah, just really, you understand their hopelessness here. It's like, there is no fucking way we're going to survive this.
Well, it feels kind of like Cthulhu-esque there when you get into the really big monster creatures, and it feels a lot scarier to me. Like, I have kind of a weird fear anyway, which is if I'm walking or driving somewhere and a shadow passes over me, like an airplane flies over and the shadow passes over me. I always just get like scared about that, and I think that it relates to these types of ideas of these,
Okay.
giant creatures that just tower over you. So that part's really cool. Yeah,
Absolutely. I think the reason I also like that is they saved that for the end, because you have like giant bugs and giant bird things and spiders, and then later like a giant crab. But that thing, it just shows up at the end. It doesn't even attack anybody.
Just going for a walk.
But all of these things were causing them problems, and they're like less than human or just over human sized. And this thing is just fun. You know what I mean? You think they had so much trouble with this tiny stuff. Like that could have just stepped on the whole shop. That could have just killed them all. So I really like that shot. I really like that creature design. And one thing I really did like, even about the attack, even though I've like poo-pooed the CGI, is, and I wasn't expecting it, is where the tentacles grabbed the bag boy and just peeled skin like really easily. I was like, whoa, okay.
Yeah.
That was cool. I like the effect of that.
Well, that was actually your favorite scene, right?
Oh yeah, I mean the scene with Norm the Bag Boy was my favorite scene. Like the build up to it was great. Yeah, I was right there with you, Martin. I felt like, okay, the CGI could have been better, but I thought that the acting was top shelf, and I loved the argument, that Drayton had with these two guys that were egging on Norm, and then Norm, is like the tough guy and like calls Drayton a pussy and like opens the door, right? And then he just gets
instantly just peeled,
wasted.
Yeah.
And I liked it too. It was just like, I was almost like a Post-it note coming down, and it just just took a lot of body off. And the actual moment after that, where Drayton is talking, to these two older guys that have been a horrible influence, and just reads them the riot act as they're trying to apologize, and then he punches one of them. I thought that was like, in terms of the film for me, that was the biggest moment for me, because I felt like in that second anything could happen. I felt like Thomas Jane could have just popped off and just started killing everyone because something in his head snapped.
Punisher style.
He really seemed like he went over the edge. And that's what I liked.
And Toby Jones is really great in that scene too.
He's a great character.
I think it's a great scene to just create like a little like dividing line to start off with for the characters. Like, okay, these guys are kind of, William Sadler and co are kind of, the ones you don't want to trust going on this journey in this film, but you want to stick with Thomas Jane. It's just a nice scene to just create like some conflict and a dividing line between the characters. So in that sense, it's pretty good. Like the scene when the biker guy decides to go for the shotgun in someone's truck and he's got like a rope attached to him is great, because I just love the creativity in how they move the rope. When the rope stops and then goes really fast, yes, it kind of feels like it's quite expected, that it would happen like that in the way we kind of watch movies and the rhythm of that. But when it goes really high up, that was kind of unexpected, and you start to imagine the scale of some of these creatures before you see them, Plus, David only dragging back his legs helps with that too, of course. So,
Well, it reminded me of Poltergeist.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because it's like when they went and to the other side to get Carol Ann back, they had him on a rope, and it was just like this movie, it was something you mentioned earlier, George. I really see all these horror films. Like I see Alien in this, because it's like we've got, we've got a one location situation, right? Yeah. And the workers in Alien are grumbling, with each other. And there's class struggles. Class struggles, are really happening here. We also have, when we go over to the pharmacy, all these people cocooned, which is very much like Aliens. And then we have like these spiders that have like this acid web spit.
Yeah. That was like it also. Like it had the people and the cocoons.
The whole cocoon scene, that was horrible.
Not a fan of spiders, Boaz?
No, I'm fine with spiders, but it was horrible. It's mainly
just not massive ones.
It's mainly, what was it? They see all these things cocooned, and something grabs hold of that guy's arm and he starts to freak out. And it's the MP. And I like how that's shot as well, because you've seen the MP before, earlier in the film, where he was reprimanding the military guys in the shop and saying like they need to come to base now. And so you've already seen him, and I thought it was interesting because when he shows up, the camera sort of really focuses on him, even though he like disappears. Like he's not very important, but the camera just kind of really pushes onto him, focuses him, follows him around. You look at very closely at him, so he's very important. He's panicking, and he's like, listen, you guys have got to go. And then you don't think anything of him later because he kind of disappears and whatever. But then I love how and because he looks completely different. Like, obviously he's covered up in webs and he's pulsating and he looks gross. But even how they do that where...
he's got boils all on his face.
Yeah, where it's like the MP helmet, that he was wearing at the beginning is like on the floor and they go to save him and they knock it and it's on the floor and the camera goes from MP helmet to him. So you're like, oh, okay, it's that guy. And then he's like... oh, this is our fault. I'm sorry, and all this shit. And then he just starts like bulbing up, like it's coming out of his skin because he's like, oh, it hurts so much, and just like they open his shirt and it's bulbing out of his shirt. I was like, oh my god,
I like when he's talking that shit.
Yeah, and when they all just burst out of his body and they just completely wreck him, that was really horrible.
Aliens again,
because he doesn't like fall onto the floor and they all kind of burst out, all the little...
Yeah, he falls on the floor and just bursts. Yeah, that was an incredible scene.
I do quite like the bit where they kind of have the like a alien chest burst fake out, where you kind of see something bubbling in his stomach. And you're like, oh no, we're going to get a cheap rip off here. But no, it comes out of his like cheek. A little one comes out of his cheek. I thought that was quite a nice misdirect there. And just like the whole makeup design, it was just wonderfully like disgusting there.
One of the only uses of slow motion, which I thought was pretty good, where the spider threw out some acid web and you have this kind of slow-mo slide from Tom Jane, and then the camera basically tracks it as it touches the floor and just like burns a line straight through the floor. So you're like, oh, okay, shit. And then regular speed, and it's just screwing up everybody. Like it burns that guy's leg off, like the skin off his leg, and burns the other dude's face off. I like how they did that. It's just like, straight to the point. You know what it can do. Like, oh shit,
Well, it was like Aliens again, because it's like you send in the Marines and they go into the Queen's Hive and all the people are cocooned, and in that they don't have weapons, right? And then they freak out because it's a bloodbath and they split. They go back, to safety. I don't know. It's crazy, but it's exciting. I love all this stuff. These are the you know what I mean, little things that I like. I want to see people in danger. Damn it!
A lot of that in here, so you're in good shape.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the chaos of a lot of this film, like especially the bug attack and like the giant vulture thingies, like breaking through the glass. Like so much is going on to like a girl gets stung by a bug and her neck gets swollen up so quickly it kills her. A guy gets himself set on fire while David and Ollie take out the vultures. And I feel like most of the shots were planned, but I feel like Frank Darabont was creating so much of the shots on the fly to create this chaos feeling. And even just, he's kind of like picking out shots from all the action that might look good, like he was the camera operator and just watching what's going on and just like, okay, I'm going to pick that out now. There's definitely a documentary like feel sometimes, not just in the action scenes, but in like the talking scenes.
Yeah, no, I felt that definitely.
Oh yeah, well, it's just, I mean, it was something. It's funny you said documentary. That George and I we were talking about it. I said the same thing. I was like, wait, it's not like interviews, but there is something that feels so loose about it that feels like we're just catching it as it happens, and it's like, some of this is just like some B-roll we happen to pick up, and that's why we have. A steady shot now and again. But it's just like these quick snapshots because there's so many people in the supermarket and they do a pretty good job of letting us in with everyone. But some people we can only get, so much information. and that's
Well, and the pacing is really breakneck in this movie.
Yeah.
Like, it kind of doesn't, you don't have a lot of breathing room, which sometimes is a bit overwhelming, I feel. Like, it makes things that probably shouldn't be funny seem funny.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we were laughing at the guy who set himself on fire.
Yeah.
It was like, it just almost comedic. He, like, you know, puts this mop into the lighter fluid, sets it on fire, immediately falls down and sets himself on fire. And it was kind of like slapstick funny almost at that moment.
I mean, would you leave that out, Georgia? Would you cut that out if you were Frank Darabont? Or
I mean,
would you tell him that?
I guess probably it sort of illustrates what he was going for, was that it is like this chaotic, wild thing. But in the context of everything else that's going on, it felt a little bit silly. And I probably would have said that to Frank Darabont, you know, because he's doing some smart things here. I guess I had read that he had the his like kind of shooting crew were the people that did the TV show The Shield. So that show kind of has like that fast paced style, and these people were used to, you know, doing things quickly on a TV schedule, working together, you know, and so I think that, you know, he had the ability to do all these fast paced things and make things very chaotic, but I feel like sometimes you have to build in a breathing room so that you can have the peaks and valleys of the feeling.
Boaz, favorite scene or shot?
I think my favorite scene is actually like the rope and the string. I think that's probably my favorite scene.
I mean, creates a lot of horror without even seeing any monsters at all. So
yeah, I know. Yeah, so I quite like that scene. You know, very mysterious and stuff. Favorite single shot, probably like when Miss, is it Courtney?
Carmody.
Carmody.
Yeah.
Yeah, when she gets shot, I mean that's amazing. You know, that's very satisfying.
Satisfying death. Georgia, what's your favorite shot or scene?
I think my favorite shot is something we already mentioned. It has to be the car with like the giant beast walking.
Yeah, that's really good.
Because it's like almost like a dinosaur-sized creature.
Yeah.
And they're so small. And, you know, at this point, they've escaped from a lot of the threat that they've been experiencing. You know, they're away from the crazy people in the supermarket. They've, you know, managed to get past, you know, the flying bugs or the spiders. And then, you know, here comes this monster that they just don't have a shot in hell against. And I think that that's probably, pun intended, the trigger for the decision that they make. Because if I was in that situation and I, you know, we've gone through all these things, but then you see that, you're just kind of hopeless at that point. Like, what hope do you really have to escape from this thing? So.
Yeah, my favorite scene is definitely that last one. You know, I think you could probably put this in any of the segments we have on this podcast. You know, the acting is incredible when like the choral operatic music stops and all the characters kind of like look at each other before David says, well, we got 4 bullets. You know, that's all he kind of says. And it's just the sheer loss of hope and fear on their faces is quite remarkable to watch. Like, and the shot that finally lands on his son, Billy, is horrifying when he wakes up and realizes what's happening. You know, and the decision to show the gunshots from the outside of the Jeep, I think, is a wise one. I think because it sits with the tone of the situation. You don't want to see blood splattered everywhere in this very like emotional moment. But when you think a large monster is approaching and a tank comes out of the mist,
I think that was really good.
Devastating. It's so devastating. You know, Thomas Jane, yes, he's not the best actor in the world, but I feel like he is incredible when, you know, he sees the tank and just loses it. Plus, great sound design in hiding what is actually coming out of the mist. I thought that was quite clever there.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think that scene was really good. Yeah, you think it's like the gurgles or whatever, some horrible sound of some beast, and it kind of just rears its head out of the mist, and it's a tank. And I love how everything just dissipates as soon as you see the tank. Just all the mist dissipates, and you see everybody. Did you notice also in the van with all the people that were saved, like refugees and stuff? There's the lady who left the store at the beginning. It's like, oh my god, how because like they meet eye to eye, and you're like, oh, how fucking horrible is that? Like she offered the chance. He said she was going out there, and he didn't take that shot because he wanted to save his son. And if he had went with her, then he would have been fine.
He would have been
and his
fine.
son would have been fine. Yeah, that's really horrible. But yeah, very very dour ending.
And her performance is actually, I think, one of my favorites in the whole movie. At the beginning, when she's asking somebody to help her, to go back to her children. And that woman ended up being in The Walking Dead.
Yeah, Melissa McBride, I think.
Working with Frank Darabont again. And I think she started as a casting director or something.
Yeah,
actually.
I think you're right. Yeah.
But she is so good in that scene at just ripping everybody apart for not helping her. I kind of think having her come back in the end is, just the icing on the cake of that ending.
Well, 3 people from Walking Dead. I mean, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, several Walking Dead. More than that, even. I mean, more than that he worked with. There are 3 major people from The Walking Dead in this, but also William Sadler, he had worked with in Shawshank, and Darabont clearly likes to work with the same people over and over.
Yeah, I mean, William Sadler, man. Wow.
Yeah, he was good.
So good.
He turns, then he turns, then he turns again. Wow.
And you buy it every time.
Yep.
Yeah. I think he definitely has the best arc. Certainly performance-wise, I would say, in this film. So, Comfort Film Podcast, what's your score for directing? You may use decimals if you want, out of 10.
I think that we fell around a 7.3. We thought the directing was fairly strong, if for no other reason than this vision. I think Frank Darabont clearly had a pretty strong vision about how the message he wanted to convey. I did ding him a bit for the guy setting himself on fire part.
Yeah, I do like the aftermath of the guy setting him on fire. When you see his burns, like he does look pretty fucked up.
Yes.
Yeah, the makeup is impressive.
It just made me think of Old School.
Oh yeah, it did.
Oh yeah.
John just kept thinking of Old School, where the mascot sets itself on fire. Not the association I think we would be looking for there.
No.
Yeah.
That put me on a weird path in this movie. Then I started thinking about like killer clowns from outer space with the cotton candy when they saw, the people in the pharmacy. I'm like, it's like killer clowns. Like I got oversaturated, like with the
references.
No break. Yeah. Like there was no break. Like, there are so many movies that are so heavy duty, like the heaviest movies, and then we'll have a quick laugh or we'll have a quick something to get out. But like I needed an escape so bad that I just built one kind of for myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, we thought he did some smart things directing wise, working with some of the same people he's used to, hiring that crew from the Shield who have a lot of experience with that type of camera work.
Yeah.
And then again, he did a good job of having this bleak theme and really showing, the internal evil of humans.
Yeah.
So I do have issues further that I probably would have fall under screenplay, but for directing, we fell around a 7.3. We thought it was a pretty good job.
Boaz, what should we go for directing? I'm willing to go a little bit higher. I think Frank
so.
Darabont generally does a great job here, especially that last scene.
Yeah.
The way that's constructed, I think, is pretty superb.
Should we go low 8s?
Like a solid 8?
Yeah, I think so.
I was a teacher, so I'm a tough grader.
That's all right. We're very, very generous.
We're very generous, yeah.
Well, it's Frank Darabont is a genius. I mean, when we take a look, we look at Shawshank, we look at Green Mile, we look at this, we look at his involvement in Walking Dead. I mean, the guy is a superstar. So I think when it came down to the rating for us, it was like we're basing it against these other films.
Comparison.
Yeah, and it's just
that makes
like
it difficult, yeah.
It made it hard. Well, this felt like a play. That was another thing. I like plays, but this felt like a play to me. And I kept saying to myself, I could see this on stage, because we had a lot of like monologue breakout moments, and we stay, in that store for the bulk of the film. I mean, we get there, I think.
Well, basically the whole film.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just like we get right there, and it's like, okay.
I mean, he does manage to make it interesting within that one location.
Well,
and he splits it into like sub locations.
Well, this one bleeds into screenplay. But again, since he wrote the screenplay, I'll say it. Yeah. It's like, my big thing too with this was that Marcia Gay Harden, Carmody, was the biggest villain in the film. And I felt like after, she, died, after Ollie shot her, that to me was kind of like the end of the movie. Like, because I was like, okay, they're going to go outside, they're going to die, or these bugs that were able to break through the glass, but now can't, might break through the glass again and get them all. Like, I felt like she was the big bad.
So screenplay then, like the discussion to convince everyone that they were attacked by tentacles is pretty good and compelling, because David is trying to convince Brent, who gave him a lawsuit in the past, and Ollie, Toby Jones's character, has been drinking, so it's difficult for everyone else to believe them, which is quite clever writing. But there's a piece of tentacle evidence in the generator still. So I would have thought David would say that there's that evidence a bit earlier in the conversation. And
yeah, I'd open with that.
Yeah, minor gripe, but I love the fact that Brent is still not convinced and the conflict between them is still there. But then he leaves like 10 minutes later, which I guess is logical for the character, but I feel like it's a shame because the mixture of their conflict and friendship, that David and Brent have was really interesting. And I kind of wished he ended up in the Jeep at the end with them. So I feel like, there was a great like starting point there that they were kind of building, and they kind of just throw it away, which is a bit of a shame between those two characters. But especially that's like one of the first characters, the first character David meets other than his family. So it's a shame that for me.
Well, Andre Braugher, yeah. I mean, how can you?
Yeah, Andre Braugher is great. And I agree. I also think that there isn't much, we don't get a resolution, which I'm sure is on purpose, with Norton and his team that went out. I think we're to assume that they died instantly. But there's so many antagonists, like other antagonists. You've got like your primary antagonist of the creatures. Then you have Miss Carmody. And then you have Norton, and he was kind of more interesting as an antagonist to me because they did have this existing relationship, and I feel like there could have been more trouble there. And clearly, he wasn't going to join up with Miss Carmody. Like, he's super rational and unwilling to accept anything supernatural, so he certainly wasn't going to join up with a religious zealot either. So it could have been, they could have ended up with more camps of people. And maybe it's like they didn't have time, but almost maybe he explores that in The Walking Dead, where they have like, all these different camps of people.
But no, I kind of agree with that. I think that would have made a lot more of an interesting interplay. And I think with timing, just add another 20 minutes and like just chop up the breakneckness of just every problem after problem after problem, and just have them kind of ruminate and discuss and argue a little more. But I think that would have been interesting because you only have like them, like they agree there are monsters. Like, I mean, it's plain to see, but they just don't agree that this is God's will. That's where they kind of draw a line. So they're not as crazy as Miss Carmody, right? I keep getting the name wrong.
You got it.
Yeah. No names for us.
Yeah, but I think it would have been good actually to have his neighbor, because like he's really rational. He just doesn't believe. He won't accept it, and you don't even get him like they try and convince him a little, and then he just goes. And I think that would have been interesting if you just have through like say half of the film. Like weird things happening, and he just refuses to believe. He's like trying to find a rational explanation. That could be interesting. I think that could be more interesting.
Well, Andre Braugher is just such a charismatic actor. I love every time you get to see him.
Yeah. I think it's a waste of a good actor as well.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's just like we brought him out at the right at the beginning. Yes, these are the guys. I mean, in the first 15 minutes, the whole film gets established, which is good. And they do it quickly and they do it organically, and I like that. And Andre Braugher and Thomas Jane are together for that. I wish he was there, because I think that the arguments that he would have brought to the table would have been incredible. And the fact that he's logical, Miss Carmody is using religion and just madness, right? Fear to control. But if we had, this other character here, he would actually be getting people to join up with him through logic. That it would have been nice.
I think that the reason they chose not to go that direction is because there was kind of no way to work with that character accepting the supernatural. So once it got to the point where you can either accept it or not accept it and just die, I think screenplay wise, they're just like, well, I got to kill this guy off. But I don't know. I feel like they could have worked with it.
Yeah. Well, I think it's more like if you want to show more of the creatures, then he's going to have to like pick a side fairly quickly. I think it's like, but either, you could have held off on showing the creatures, or just he keeps trying to think of rational explanations and not like trust his senses. Like, they're just animals or whatever. They're just vultures. I don't know what the fuck's going on, but it must be like animals. It's the zoo. I'm not, maybe we're getting high. Maybe this mist is like LSD or
that's
something.
A good one.
I don't know.
The mist is like vaporized LSD.
Yeah.
You could have created a bit more levity with that.
Yeah.
Some more breathing rooms in that sense, I guess.
Well, we got robbed. Well, yeah. I mean, it's like we deserve to know what happened to him.
Yeah.
We deserve to know.
Yeah, definitely. So what do we make of like Marcia Harden's arc in this? I thought it was pretty good, the way that was constructed. Like the more like bad things that were happening, the more attacks that were happening, she gained more followers preying on their fear. I thought that was quite good. There's a bit where like a bug just like lands on her chest and it doesn't harm her at all.
Yeah.
And a few of the other characters notice that, and she's associating lines from the Bible about what's actually happening to do with locusts and things. So, I like the progression there, but you kind of only really get that one scene when Marcia Harden has kind of radicalized pretty much most of the supermarket and are, willing to kill that military guy, Private Jessup. So that was pretty intense, but I don't know, could we have got to that stage a bit earlier? Or, as you said, again, like having the third party of Brent in there would have been interesting.
I did also quite like her sort of rise, and how in the first time she's talking about all this apocalyptic stuff, they're just ignoring her or telling her to shut up, like she doesn't know what the hell she's talking about. And then just as the first major attack, and she's got a few more followers during the spider attack, the people that were left, like they even joined her cult. I quite like that, where he sees them next after he wakes up, because he's been out for a while, and like they're all praying there, like the handyman that survived. I thought that was quite interesting.
Yeah, the power that she gained was really frightening. I mean, the character was really harsh, because there was a scene where she was in the restroom and she was praying, and then Laurie Holden comes in and is like, if you need a friend, I'll talk to you. And she's like, I don't want to be your friend.
Oh, yeah.
If I want a friend like you, I would bend down and squat and shit one out.
Oh my God, I know.
Whoa.
It's like, where is that coming from?
Exactly. She would have these harsh moments where she would like just call people names, and it was like it was so off base from what any religious person would do. And then we had like you talked about, we had the sacrifice.
Well, she asks for a human sacrifice. I mean,
yes.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty insane. Like, and she's like, "Get the boy." You're like, "What?"
Yeah. Oh no.
Well, and then she's like, "And the whore."
Yeah.
Laurie Holden's character is like, "Why does she have such a hatred of this woman?" I don't know. It was instant.
She's crazy. I like that she was by the front door of the supermarket with this big bottle of milk. I don't know why I like that.
Just like holding the knife like above her head, you know, really relaxed and stuff.
Taking a break
when they're trying to leave.
Waiting for cookies.
But I guess in a film like this, there had to be a strong reason for our main characters to get out of the supermarket because they're very, you know, from the start, they're like, yeah, we got to stay here to survive. But eventually you kind of need something for them to get out to have that end that Frank Darabont wants. So, you know, I liked her arc a lot. It did feel a tad divisive, a tad, but I still really enjoyed it. Favorite lines, people? What do we got?
All right. You got it?
I don't know exactly what he says. It's Toby Jones as Ollie. He says something like, some people won't believe you if their hair is on fire or something like this. Like they're telling, you know, everybody what happened in the back room, and they just don't believe him, and they don't believe Drayton, they don't believe, you know, Ollie. And it's like, you know, we just saw this, we have evidence, but just you can't convince some people.
Yeah. It's like you can't convince some people there's a fire, even if their hair's burning or something.
Yeah, that one. I thought that was a really good one.
I like the one from the biker guy just before he leaves. And he says, "Hey, crazy lady, I believe in God too. I just don't think he's a bloodthirsty asshole you make him out to be." And then she says, "Well, you take that up with the devil when you run into him. Just chat over it at your leisure." You know? I thought that was great.
And then he dies like 10 seconds later, so
yeah,
that's unfortunate.
I loved Biker Guy. I wish there was more Biker Guy.
Yeah, he was great.
Yeah, I think also he would be an interesting counterpoint if, like, he delved into the religious side. Like, if he stuck around and he's like, listen, I'm standing up for religious people who are not, like, lunatics or whatever. You know,
Oh, wow.
That would have been interesting.
That would have been great.
That part was originally intended for Stephen King to play. I read in the trivia, but he said no.
Oh, really?
And he ended up getting this guy that had been in Shawshank.
I think my favorite one is probably another funny one when, like, a lot of them are, I don't know, saying expiation.
Yeah.
And then Toby Jones says, "Welcome to Sesame Street. Today's word is expiation."
I think that we all pretty much liked the Ollie quotes for the most part.
I think the Ollie quotes are the best.
Yeah, because he was like the voice that you wanted. He was like such a solid character. This is a guy that I feel you could count on as a friend. Like, you would listen to this guy.
Well, and he was also good at talking philosophy without it seeming heavy-handed. They did have some other scenes where they were, you know, having these philosophical discussions about, you know, if people are fundamentally good or evil, and it felt very wedged in to me. But when Ollie was talking about it, I think it didn't feel that way. Like your quote.
Yeah, well, it's this one was, as a species, we're fundamentally insane. Put more than two of us in a room, we pick sides and start dreaming up reasons to kill one another. Why do you think we invented politics and religion?
Yeah. I was actually going to suggest that as my favorite line. I like that one where his boss reprimands him and is like for him to write down his name or some shit like that. And he's like, "Well, go and write my name down. But until then, shut the fuck up." You know, like,
I like that guy was still like, "Oh, or do you want to lose your job?" I'm like, there are worse things to deal with right now than whether you're going to have a job.
I also liked that the boss's name, I think, was Bud. There's just something really enjoyable. Bud. You know, and another great actor. He was on Ozark. He was the sheriff. So many good actors in this. Like, I mean, that's the thing where I have to really just take my hat off, because all of the people that he put together for this, you know, this one location piece, he got the best of the best. And, you know, it was like the only regret that you have is with some of them, like Andre Braugher in particular, you wanted more. Yeah.
I think even the kid, I was impressed with the kid where he's trying to, like, console him, and the kid is, like, fucking shaking, you know, and, like, crying. You know? And I was like, wow, I don't know if they beat the hell out of that kid or something, you know. but he's doing a
Who
pretty good
knows?
job.
Scary.
Screenplay score, Comfort Film Podcast. What are you going for?
6.9.
Again, I'm a super critical hard
Ooh,
grader.
okay.
The stuff that felt problematic to me felt very problematic. I felt like there was really a lean into melodrama too much, probably, and that heavy-handed philosophical stuff really kind of grinds everything to a halt. I mean, in a way, we were talking about how we wish that they had some slower moments, but when they did have a slower moment, I can't say I very much enjoyed what they did with it. So maybe the breakneck pacing worked after all.
Well, and then also the suicides. We just had like this rash of suicides in the film. And at that point, I was pretty numb. Like the one older lady in the aisle, it's like, hey, are you awake? And then we see the pills. I'm like, okay. And then like the military guys, they hung themselves in the back, back by the loading dock. And I was like, oh, okay. Like I don't know.
They don't get many lines do they,
No.
at all, really. So you don't really know them at all. So it doesn't feel very earned when they do die.
So, I mean, I think one probably like way they could sort of rectify that is either you start the beginning a lot slower and you get to know people, or you have moments where, if there are slow moments, like they get to talk about their life or like more kind of emotional stuff, rather than like what you were saying, have an aside to talk about philosophy. Maybe just talk about like where'd you come from, how the hell did you get here? More personal stuff. I miss this and that. So that because I do kind of agree, there aren't that many deaths where I'm like, I feel bad for them. I feel definitely bad at the end where he shoots his family. But I mean, of course I'm going to, because Thomas Jane, we've been with him through the entire movie. But most of the other characters, I couldn't really care what happened to them. So, yeah, maybe, you can rectify that. I think it could have been rectified with you having more character building moments. I think that's probably a lost that's a lost opportunity. Do you know what I mean? But I do agree, you get a lot of people die towards the end, and you're like, all right,
we'll see you. Yeah.
Well, you don't feel anything. You don't feel too much when some of these minor characters die. I think when Toby Jones's character Ollie dies, I was quite gutted when he got
he was pretty cool,
taken by that magnificent crab monster. But I was quite gutted when he died.
Yeah, he was probably gutted as well.
So screenplay score, Boaz. What shall we go with? Like a 7.5?
Yeah, maybe. Jesus, maybe 7.3.
I just feel like that end is so bold.
The end is really good.
Yeah.
I genuinely like the end. Also, I'm going to get into like conspiracy theory here, but what if the crazy cult lady, what if she was right and that it's him killing his son because she wanted to sacrifice the son to end this? What if she's 100% right and he killed his son and that's what stopped the mist? What if she was the good guy?
Sounds like an Abrahamic conspiracy theory.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Wow.
So I've been thinking about that for a little while, and I was like, man, if that was the case, that would be insane. Everybody's like, she's crazy, she's evil. And you're like, well, when he killed his son, this did stop. So, maybe it's not a coincidence.
She wanted the son and Laurie Holden dead, and right after he shot them both.
Yeah, and they both died. And there is no, the mist descends away and the army comes through. So that's just a mad conspiracy theory I have there.
Well, it's like biblical plagues.
Yeah.
It is biblical.
Yeah, right.
So 7.4? Is that a good middle ground?
Yeah, okay, yeah. As I say, I think there is a lot of like good, funny bits of dialogue. There's some really great creature moments. I like the main character, I like the ending. There are just like missed opportunities. Like there are characters that are wasted. There's not enough like building, emotional connection or building with a lot of characters. There's a lot of missed opportunities. So yeah, I agree with that. But I think the ending would escalate that to a 7.4 or something.
Yeah, let's go with that. So acting then, I think Marcy Gay Harden is amazing in this film, I must say, as Miss Carmody. like when the characters learn that the military was involved and Carmody does this like rousing speech to now most of the people in the store, and she's incredible because I feel like it comes so easy for her. I just think it's a testament to how deep into this character she has embedded herself into. And when Private Jesse has been fed to this magnificent crab of a creature, I did like that design. She says, the beast will leave us alone tonight. Tomorrow we'll just have to wait and see. In a very like quiet tone, and she looks very calm, and I feel like she's not really doing too much different from when she was doing this speech. She was just talking a lot louder. She's just so in the zone of that character. I just really, really enjoyed her performance in this.
It's very committed and it's very honest. This is something I think you talked to me about, Georgia, that it was, she didn't want to do it, right?
Yeah, she kind of, I read trivia on this, that she kind of felt like, I don't know if I want to do this kind of monster movie type thing. Because she's probably known for doing more movies that are like emotional and dramatic, things like that. And she actually talked to Andre Braugher, and he said, well, don't look at it as just a monster movie. Look at it as, an opportunity to play this character. And she ended up accepting the part. And I think that's exactly what she did. Yeah, she's playing like a crazy wackadoodle person, but it's kind of like, it really is kind of like Piper Laurie and Carrie. You have like this really fanatical, zealous, religious person who is clearly got mental health issues that are running rampant and unchecked. And she finds herself in a position of, really being able to indulge in her most horrible opinions and thoughts here, and then have support for that, and the support grows, and it's not just support from people, it's like things that happen, like the bug that lands on her and doesn't attack her, just further convinces her that she's right. And her transformation from like this really tight, like uptight, like her hair is tight, everything on her seems like super uptight, to at the end she's just kind of walking around with that milk bottle, waving it around, her hair's all down.
She likes her milk.
I liked that that attention to detail where like she grows more bold about just like espousing her views. And at the beginning she got like pushback, people telling her to shut up and what have you, or threatening her. And she's quite like in herself, like even though she says this shit, like she's quite, close to her own body. Do you know what I mean? So like next to her purse, really tight. And then it just kind of like she loosens up just more and more. And then, it's at the end, she's just like fucking arms flailing, like just like much, much looser. Cause it's like, nobody can harm me. I've got every, I'm in the right,
Watching somebody get drunk on power is pretty heavy. And I felt like she definitely drank the cup, and she really, she pushed it. And when she didn't get bitten by the creature, oh man, it was like Masters of the Universe. She was like He-Man by the power of Grayskull. You know what I mean? She just became like super evil
by the power of Grey Bug.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Like it was just like nothing was going to stop her. And she is just such a fantastic actor, and like it brought the threat. And for me, like I said, I found her to be scarier than the creatures outside. And then William Sadler, like, I mean, forget it. I mean, William Sadler, a guy that disappears into everything, and again, a doofus egging on Norm, getting him killed, having that that moment of repentance, forgive me. Then he's a good guy. Then he's like going out to be a hero at the pharmacy. And then he decides, oh, wait, the crazy religious lady is right. And like, I mean, if this movie kept going, I mean, how many more changes would we have seen from him? Like,
I think he's definitely a very fickle character. I don't think they should have trusted him with anything.
No. I mean, it's the people that they had were just like, everybody. I mean, Jeffrey DeMunn, right? The older gentleman that runs in at the beginning. He's got blood on his face saying, they're coming, everything's bad.
He's great.
That moment with him completely sold me on the danger. And that was that without seeing anything. It was on the strength of his performance.
Yeah.
He was, for me, a real anchor in establishing the threat. And when we did get, into the back scene in the loading dock, I do think that scene's excellent. And yeah, we talked about how the CGI didn't hold up, but I felt like that threat I had already gotten. So when I got to that scene and like the tentacles were a little, I was like, oh yeah, but Jeffrey DeMunn told me it's scary. And I'm like, oh yeah.
Yeah. That's when like the movie really starts for me, is when Jeffrey DeMunn enters, the film's got into gear now. We're in for the ride now.
Yeah.
Favorite performances, people? What have we got?
We wrote down a list.
I mean, Andre Brower and Marsha Gay Harden for sure. But I think mine is probably Toby Jones.
Toby Jones, yeah.
I thought he was so great. And I mean, I'm always looking for the person in the movie that I like. And this is like the likable person. He's like kind of the lone likable person in some ways.
Yeah, I think he is my favorite likable character, where you're like, man, he should have been the hero. I love this dude.
Well, yeah, he is the one. When he does die, you're gutted. You're like, oh no, not Toby Jones.
Yeah.
Yeah, you wanted like a whole world of him,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Boaz, what's your favorite performance?
I think my favorite performance is Marcia Gay Harden.
Yeah, that's mine as well, yeah.
I think she's my favorite performance, just because I love bad guys. I just adore villains. And I just thought she was a really good villain.
I mean, where would we be without the bad guys?
John, who's yours?
Well, narrowing it down. I mean, seriously, we have a list of like 11 people over here that I'm looking at. We're like, ooh, that one, and that one, and that one. And it's like, it's like, where do I go? There were some people that were quick. I'm giving this list super fast.
Okay, the whole list. Just
so here it is.
Your favorite.
I like, all right, what the hell? I love Marcia Gay Harden, and I love Toby Jones, and I quit.
Top
three. All right, top three. William Sadler. Those are my top three.
All right.
Yeah,
and Biker Guy. I like Biker Guy. All right. I didn't get
honorable
that
mention.
Oh yeah, Biker Guy.
And Brent. Yeah, Brent was good.
And now I'll read the full credits of the film.
Comfort Films podcast. What's your score for acting for The Mist?
This one we gave an 8.2. We thought there was some really good acting in this, pretty much across the board.
Yeah, heavy hitters in this.
I'm loving your commitment to the decimals. I like it.
Very splitting hairs.
Boaz, what should we go for acting?
Yeah. What do you reckon?
For me, definitely Marcia Gay Harden is pretty extraordinary in this. In a lot of ways, a very internal performance as well as external. But yeah, William Sadler, amazing. I think he definitely has the best arc in terms of his performance. Just the way he's saying, when he's preaching the Sesame Street words. Expiation. Don't know what that means, but that was quite extraordinary when he was doing that. So yeah, like 8.3 or something, 8.4.
Yeah, I've just noticed we've barely ever talked about Thomas Jane. Like, do you feel? Do you feel he's been miscast?
He's fine.
Exactly. That's what my opinion on him is. He is serviceable. He's fine. He can do it. He can do the job he's been set for.
Yeah.
A lot of his co-stars, I think, just like they're like head and shoulders above him. But he can do his job.
He did not do the heavy lifting here. That's for sure.
No, he didn't. No. And I always find that strange in a film where the actor who's the protagonist is not the performance you really remember. Then I think, and it's not that he's bad. It's just, again, as you said, I don't think he does the heavy lifting. He's not that memorable. I just remember all the other characters except him. I think the only thing that stands out is him crying at the end.
His character is kind of boring, though. I mean,
his character is pretty boring, actually.
Compared to everyone else, he is kind of just like this everyman type person who's just kind of at the center of it, but he doesn't do anything particularly extraordinary compared to
Nah.
other people until the end. I think the end is where
Yeah.
where Thomas Jane kind of finally comes into his own
Yeah.
and really does do
Yeah.
something big, but that's like 2 hours of that not happening and him just kind of being
Yeah.
fading into this larger ensemble of people who are doing a lot bigger things.
Well, the moments I felt like that he had for me that I really liked, they were spaced out. And again, since we did have like an ensemble cast, it's easy like in the flow of things to go, I forget that beat. One of the things that I liked very much was a very quick scene when he went back to the loading dock and he shut down the generator because of all the smoke. And when he shut down the generator, we couldn't see. And then he just kind of tripped into the fence.
Oh, yeah.
You know, he hits his
I
elbow.
almost forgot about that.
I was like, man, it hurt. And you know what I mean? And then like he goes out and he can't see and he trips over a pallet and he falls. I'm like, oh, like,
yeah,
you
he
know,
did that very well because
excellent.
I went like, like multiple times. Yeah.
Well, it's there because I worked in a warehouse when I was younger. And I've had stupid things where I've tripped over a pallet. I trip over everything, but I've tripped over, a pallet. And I was like, oh my God, that was it. So it was like, I loved that beat. I loved him, the breakdown that we saw after Norm was killed. Those were the highlights. And of course the ending. I mean, there's no doubting it. But I feel like for me, those were like his anchor moments. But in the sea of craziness, you don't necessarily think about that character.
Well, and for another example, like when they're driving away and, they go by his home and they see the wife kind of cocooned up on the wall.
Right.
I feel like there's not much happening with him there. I mean, he says, I was supposed to come do this and get that tree out of the way and blah, blah. But I don't feel like
not convinced by that.
He just kind of feels like it kind of feels tossed off a little bit.
Yeah, no, I kind of agree with that. I think he could have done something there because that is his wife. It does feel like, I was meant to do that chore. I guess now I don't need to do that. She's not going to nag me anymore. Load off my head.
Not doing the dishes again. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like it is kind of a weird thing you would say in that moment, though.
It is a very strange thing.
I still quite like that performance.
Yeah.
But, so we going with like 8.3 Boaz?
Yeah, I think that sounds fair. Yeah.
Right, let's add up the scores then for The Mist. So The Mist gets a respectable 46.1. Could win. Could. Probably won't.
Probably
it's got a chance.
We can just score everything a 1, and then I think we'd win.
Yeah. That's it for part 1. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. Check out part 2 to see who wins. But don't stop there. Get involved and tell us what your favourite films are relating to the episodes. Send us a DM or comment on Instagram and TikTok at Film vs. Film Podcast, for Twitter at FVF_podcast. If you do, we'll give you a shout out on the next episode. If you're feeling really generous, you can buy us a one-off coffee at our Buy Me a Coffee account. Remember, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. Pod signing off.